Hi, I am Carly Kremer. I'm the founder of Beekeepers Naturals, and today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Joel Warsh.
Hi, I'm Joel Warsh, and I'm a pediatrician in Los Angeles, California. It is so nice to be here to chat with you today.
As a new mom, I'm really focused on sugar content, ingredients, dyes, all the stuff, and something that I have learned about is how with drug fact panels, you don't actually need to disclose all the ingredients. So as a pediatrician, what are things that what are ingredients parents really need to watch out for?
Yeah, I think, first of all, that's, to me, as a pediatrician and as a dad, crazy that you don't have to disclose all ingredients.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that we need to change, that all ingredients should be on the labels, but it's important to look at sugar. Added sugar content, I think, is really important and not always disclosed. Other things to look for would be fragrances, sweeteners, any sort of chemicals, artificial dyes, preservatives. I think these are all really important to look for, and hopefully they're listed, but they don't always have to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden ingredients, and what I really want to see is even companies that have drug fact panels just publicly posting the information, the calories, the sugar, the full ingredients, because you really don't know, and especially as parents, we're really watching just the overall intake, so it's something I care a lot about.
Yeah, and I would say one of the big things that really needs to change in the food industry is those secretive terms where you don't even know what's underneath there, like fragrances or perfumes or artificial flavors or anything like that, where you don't necessarily have to disclose. It could be a proprietary blend, but that really then goes on the company to state what they put in there, and they don't always do. And then if there's something that's not that great in there, but it's at a small amount, they don't have to disclose it. And I don't think most people realize that.
No, they don't. And the proprietary blend is a big one. It's not all sinister. I don't think like every company is trying to hurt people by doing this. But a lot of the times with these proprietary blends, it has like the smallest percentage of the active. And you're paying money for this product thinking you're getting this great ingredient and doing something for your health, and it has the smallest thing. And then we don't really know what else is in that blend. Like we don't know. I know some brands, they have like a proprietary blend of honey, and then if you were to take it apart at a lab, it's like corn syrup. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like after being involved in this for many years and working with a lot of companies and being involved in products, usually if something's not labeled, they're trying to hide it. Mm-hmm. It would be very rare that a company would have something that's so proprietary, so special, that they don't want to share it because they don't want other people to steal it. And in general, that's not what we're doing. We're trying to make as good a product as possible. And generally, the companies that have a great product are very open about what's in there, very specifically what it is, where it's from, and they're happy to be third-party tester. They third-party test themselves, and they show it for the world because they're proud of what's in there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's our philosophy with Beekeepers. I don't want to make anything that I wouldn't take, I wouldn't give to my kid. And so we're very, very transparent. It's one of our core values. We're big on third-party testing, third-party studies, all of that stuff. But it is really important for people to look out for that stuff. And I wanted to ask you, in your practice, I'm sure you're seeing this a lot. These parents, these families where they're doing everything right and they don't understand why their kids are sick. And is this why? I know there's so many toxins in our environment these days, but there are so many misleading healthy foods. Are you seeing that a lot?
Yes, I think that's one of the big issues that we're facing. Number one, I think our food is just not that healthy in general. And then when you do buy something you think is healthy, oftentimes is not. We're missing some of the additives or the preservatives or the chemicals. It's not always labeled. I mean, you can go to the grocery store and buy an apple, and maybe it's an organic apple, but who knows what it was sprayed with after that point. It doesn't have to be labeled. And I believe that we're being misled and that we're being exposed to a lot more chemicals than we really are led to believe, and that adds up. I mean, a little bit here and there is probably not the end of the world, but if we have a chemical here and a chemical here, and it's not labeled here, it's not labeled here, then that adds up over time. And when we're talking about kids, especially, it makes a big difference because they could be getting these chemicals for 10, 20 years, and oftentimes we don't realize something is a problem until we do. And if it's not even labeled, then how are we supposed to realize that that's the problem? I mean, sometimes we'll see kids that'll come with an allergic reaction to something they've had 20 times. Yeah. And maybe it's something on the product that they had, which wasn't even on the label. Mm-hmm.
Given the challenge with disclosing on product labels and environmental toxins, what are 3 quick things that you recommend for parents to do just to keep their family safe?
Number one, I would say read the labels on everything. I think that is extraordinarily important. I think you need to go through your closets and your cupboards and really think through all the food that you have in your home and really make sure that we're purchasing the healthiest food possible. And I think we need to start thinking about all the products that we bring into our home, put on our skin. We don't remember oftentimes that our skin is an organ, and it's really important that we're not spraying too many chemicals in our environment or putting things on our skin that are going into our kids. So just some simple, small changes, but it can make a big difference.
Amazing. And then for those products where they're not disclosing the information, do you recommend people just cut that out? Should they email the companies? How should they navigate that? Because there is just so much that, isn't transparent, even though it should be.
It's very hard to be a parent right now because you only have so much time to be a detective, and it would be unreasonable, I think, to say to a parent, every time you buy a product, you got to go onto the internet and you got to contact the company to ask them about all the ingredients. I think that you have to do as much as you can within reason. I think it starts by reading the label and starting to get to know companies, and hopefully you can purchase from companies that have a good track record of disclosing, and then you can kind of work your way from there. We don't all have a PhD in biochemistry, and so we won't necessarily understand everything on the label, but at least if you start reading labels, then you'll see long chemical names you don't even know what they are, and that's a good thing to start to cut out. And then the more that you really engage with this, then maybe you do start doing a little bit of research on some of the products, and maybe it's not everything, but one thing at a time. And I think that would go a long way for families.
So, Dr. Warsh, what's the difference between refined sugars and unrefined sugars?
So what you're looking for with a sugar ideally would be something that's as unrefined as possible, so in the natural form. Refined means it's going through a plant and they're taking out a lot of the nutrients and they're chemically processing it into something else to be used in food. And so ideally, if you're cooking with food or buying food, you want to buy the sugars that you actually know what they are. You know what the words are, like honey or maple syrup or monk fruit or coconut sugar. I mean, there's a lot of really good sugars out there. Even cane sugar, if it's prepared properly, can be good too. So I think that we really want to go with those real sugars as opposed to the chemically processed ones like high fructose corn syrup or the many other words that are out there for these processed sugars that come from not sugar.
So refined basically means it's been chemically treated, and unrefined, it's coming from a natural source. And then in the unrefined sugar hierarchy, how do you stack that up? Because for me in my house, I'm, reaching for honey. I try to stay away from cane sugar. I'm definitely staying away from like the corn syrup, and then don't even get me started on the artificial sweeteners. But my go-to is honey. I'm comfortable with monk fruit. Cane sugar is kind of the one I avoid. What do you think of all that?
I would put honey at the top almost for sure, just because we know that of pretty much any chemical or any product on this earth, honey is one of the best for us. I mean, we know that through tons of research. It's the one product that can basically last through the apocalypse. It can almost last forever by a lot of studies without going bad, and it's antibacterial, antimicrobial, and there's a long list of studies on that. And even when you talk about pediatrics and the American Academy of Pediatrics, it's even now for coughs, it's the number one thing that's recommended. I mean, there's very little research that's bad on honey. So I think if you're going to have a hierarchy, that's going to be at the top. And then any of the actual words that are food, I would put them next. So whether it's coconut, monk fruit, maple syrup, I think things that are natural from a plant or a tree or in the real world, that's going to be better for you because it's more real. Your body's meant to process that. And then, I don't know where sweeteners goes. I mean, it's lower for sure. The more research that comes out on sweeteners, I think the more that we realize that they're problematic. And so I would still minimize those. And then certainly all the processed, refined, high fructose corn syrups and all the other things are not so great for you and we get way too much of it. So I would really not use that ever and try to minimize purchasing anything with it in it if it's possible.
Yeah. I actually saw a study recently, and it was talking about how honey actually can support the insulin response. And I don't know if it's because it's so high in polyphenols, flavonoids, and I know those can help with insulin sensitivity, but it's really interesting because I feel like with the keto movement, we really got scared of all sugars, and I am very big on limiting sugars generally, but honey actually I feel like has a really healthy place in the diet.
Right, and we shouldn't be afraid of sugar. Sugar is not bad. Our body runs on sugar. Our brain runs on sugar. So it's not by definition bad. It's the sugar that we're eating now and the mass amounts of it that is the problem. I mean, if you look at the data, we get more sugar by the time we're 10 than most adults had their entire life. You probably, in one meal, most people eat more sugar than they need in the whole week, right? And so it's the buildup of all of this sugar that is a problem, not a little bit of sugar, and certainly not having fruit. You know, that's not a problem if you're having some sugar from fruit. I mean, if you eat tons and tons of anything, it could be a problem, theoretically, but within reason, if you're having honey, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be good for you. If anything, it's pretty magical what honey can do. I mean, even in the office, sometimes people are like, oh, can I put honey on that rash? You know,
everything.
It's amazing what it can do. And I think we're just at the beginnings of even understanding the magic of honey.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so interesting because bees have been around since prehistoric times. They've clearly survived. There's clearly something happening with the honey, the propolis, the royal jelly, all the stuff from the hive. And I feel like people, particularly in North America, are just waking up to the health benefits.
I think we're waking up to it, one, because some people are moving backwards in terms of getting back to more natural lifestyle, which I think is important. And we're also recognizing how important bees are. I don't think that was ever even a thought in anybody's mind, maybe 20 or 50 years ago, because they just were around and you're like, I don't want to get stung by a bee, so you know, I don't want my bees around. But then you start to realize how important they actually are and how they are starting to die out and how we're having problems. And without them, we're going to be in trouble. And so I think there's been this movement back to supporting the bees and really recognizing just what a magical life form that is and what the honey can actually do for us.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because in Europe, propolis is just a part of the medical system, particularly for kids. There's also studies looking at the synergistic effects of bringing propolis in when giving a kid an antibiotic, and just the different ways propolis can support your bodies because it's so high in polyphenols. Propolis doesn't really have a sugar content, so that's not even a thing, but so high in polyphenols, flavonoids, coumarins. There's so many benefits of propolis, and it's such a part of the European medical system for kids and adults. But here, why is it just not known?
I think for the same reason we had cough medicines forever, right? It's just, we live in a society that's run by pharmaceutical companies and has been for several decades at this point. And so if you can make a pill for something, then that's what you give. If it's a natural compound, then it was never really studied as in depth here. And even if it was kind of pushed aside because it wasn't something you can make money on. And I believe that's probably the reason. Because if you look at something like propolis, there's a ton of research out there on the effects that it can have for your immune system and supporting your immune system, and you know, honey in general. There's more research on it for the antimicrobial, antiviral than almost any medicine. It's insane if you really look at it, and that is why that it's now recommended above having a cough syrup for kids, because there is actually a ton of research. But who's doing that research, right? It's not a pharmaceutical company. They're not doing double-blind controlled trials, and so that has kind of moved away. And then as we've gone back to a realization that we're over-medicating ourselves and our kids, then we're looking for more natural remedies that do have good evidence behind them. And I believe that of anything that's out there, honey, propolis has as much research as there is and basically no risks or very minimal risks. And so why not?